G'day and welcome to another episode of the Andrew Price Podcast, the podcast for serious artists, people who want to learn the techniques, habits, learning curriculums, and all that stuff that doesn't fit into a tutorial, but is important. This is going to be another Q&A episode where I take your questions that were sent in, which you can do at blenderguru.com/podcast question. It has to be a video. You take out your smartphone, you hit selfie mode, and you go, "Hey, Andrew, I'm so-and-so from wherever. This is my question." And 30 to 60 seconds, and then I'll answer it. So let's not beat around the bush. Let's jump straight into it with our first set of questions. Now, where did they go? Dadgummit. I swear they were right here. Oh, come on. Such a stunted start. All right, here we go.
Hey, Andrew. My question is, how do you filter out feedback? Say that you get feedback from a lot of different people and some advice against the other. How do you figure out what feedback is best for your work? And when do you know when to stop asking for feedback and trying to figure it out yourself? Thanks.
It's a very good question. It was a question I had to Colin Levy when we were working on a short film together. Because, yeah, everyone's got feedback. Everyone's got an opinion. And art is subjective. And, you know, he had some people that were like, you know, this character's weak. And then others that were like, I don't think that's the problem. I think it's this. I think it's too long. And then I was like, no, I like the length. I think it should be shorter. And he's just like constantly, because he's doing the right thing, getting feedback from everyone. But like, you've then got to filter it and figuring out what feedback do you listen to versus something else. So I think that for starters, the general public's gut reaction is worth listening to. So all feedback is important. I used to think that I was the only one that was asking my wife for feedback on art when I finish it. And then I discovered that others also have been asking my wife for feedback. No, they ask their wives for feedback. It's really common to ask a partner, like, hey, just tell me, what do you think? And the reason for that is like they're not an artist, but they've got the gut reaction. They'll know when something feels off. And really what you're trying to do is like just get a fresh perspective because you've been in it for so long that you've forgotten what it looks like to look at it for the first time. So, yeah. Now, here's the one thing. I think I mentioned this in my Cabin in the Wood tutorial. Like, the gut reaction is usually right and worth listening to, but their solution for fixing it could be hit or miss. You don't know what it is. Like, say you've got a character, and then they're like, the hair looks weird to me. You know, I would probe further. Why does it look weird? But then they're like, I think it might be the hair is too shiny. Yeah, the hair's too shiny. Now, that might be right, or it might be wrong. Like, the hair might be just the right shininess, right? If you're using the principled hair shade, it's probably right. Don't touch that. Maybe it's that the light is so close to the subject that you're getting, like, so much reflections, like, all over. And it's just, it looks too shiny. But it's not to do with the shininess of the material. It's to do with the lighting. So an experienced artist is usually right on with their solution, but a public's only got the gut reaction, not necessarily the solution. So anyways, that is what I would say. Now, as for who to listen to, now this is really where, asking multiple questions will definitely help. Like if somebody is like, the short film feels too long. It's like, okay, which parts felt too long? This scene and this part, it just felt slow overall. It's like, okay, so this scene in particular, yeah, what was it about that scene that felt like, well, there just wasn't, there wasn't many moving shots. It was just kind of like static. And it's like, okay, so maybe it's the shots that weren't moving. Maybe there was no like fast cuts. Maybe there was no, things that were happening in the scene that kind of kept me engaged. I kind of tuned out for a little bit. So it's not the length of it. It was just that there wasn't enough interesting parts in that. But again, if you got two different camps, right, you might show two groups of people the same film. Let's use the film example, whatever. And then they would go, one of them would be like, it was too long. And another was like, it was great. Well, that is really where your artistic interpretation comes in. Who do you want to listen to? And often it can depend on, what sort of audience you want to appeal to. Like if the first group that thought it was too long was a bunch of teenage TikTokers who can barely sit through a 30-second video, well, you might want to appeal to them. That might be a demographic you need to appeal to. But maybe you want to appeal to the cinephiles, which is the second group, who's like, no, it's not too long, it's great. In which case, to ignore the first one. But yeah, art is subjective. Some people, some artists, in fact, I would honestly say some of the best art is not aimed for the general public. It is aimed, or not aimed for the mainstream, you would call it, right? Like, people like, Hollywood is just like out of ideas, right? They keep saying like it's out of ideas. They just keep rehashing the same ideas. And that's kind of because it's designed for the mainstream audience. And much like pop music, standing for popular music, right? That's right. Yeah, that's why it's called popular music, right? Much like that, that's by design, right? And I don't think it's necessarily a fault of Hollywood. They're investing hundreds of millions of dollars often into a movie. And to get that back, they have to have some sort of guarantee that it's going to be successful, right? And so they have to base it on what people are sort of expecting. So they're expecting, there's certain genres, quadrants of movies. There's the big budget blockbuster, there's the horror film, there's the comedy with celebrity stars, there's the romance with celebrity stars. There's, and the poster has to look a certain way, the trailer has to hit these beats. And that's because that's what people sort of expect. And that expectation is really crucial to hit that mainstream audience. Think of it like this, okay? Have you ever been in a friend's car and they're like blasting their music because they love this track and it's just, you can't stand it, right? It's not for you. You don't like that piece, right? Versus you could go through a shopping center for hours and listen to the music playing through the speakers and not even notice it, right? But sometimes the track will change in the shopping center to a track that's kind of weird or eclectic or something like that, and suddenly you notice it and then you hate it, right? There's the popular genre is a genre, and you can appeal to that. And I don't actually think there's anything wrong with that what Hollywood's doing. It's just they're trying to recoup their investment. And look, like not everyone is a cinephile looking for something adventurous and new and unique. They've got a movie that they want to see on date night, and you haven't been out of the house for the last 6 months. And do you want to risk it with this, like, I don't know, Oscar-nominated avant-garde film with two people that you haven't heard of before or something like that? Like, or you just want to go for like, this one's probably going to be good. It's got the big red text. It's starring Reese Witherspoon, and that's showing how old I am. Is she even making movies anymore? Who else is like, who's the hot young, who would it be? It's probably like a TikToker now, isn't it? There's always the go-to romance female actor. Who would it be today? I was going to say Hillary Duff. How old am I? I'm so out of it. I don't even know. But anyways, so anyways, it's a sort of a safe bet. So who do you listen to, right? Who do you listen to? Like, here's an example. Like, if you go to an NFT platform, which, by the way, stay tuned. My NFT project's coming very soon. But if you go to an NFT platform, Nifty Gateway especially, they got some really weird stuff, super rare as well. If you check out those websites, every time I go there, I find like, I don't like 70% of what I see on there, okay? But I love, like the 20% I'm like, yeah, it's pretty good. And then the 10% I'm like, oh, I love that, right? That is kind of the point of art, I think, is that everybody's got different tastes, right? And that's the point. And in fact, some artists say that they don't care that 99% of people hate their work or don't like it. They're only trying to appeal to the 1%, the true fans. And I think there's truth to that to a lot of things in life that you produce or that you create or you're trying to appeal to. The 500 fans, 100 fans, 1,000 fans, whatever it is that Kevin Kelly wrote years ago. Anyways, that well, where am I going with this? I can't even remember what I was trying to say. Anyways, it's you just need to know who it is you're trying to appeal to. Okay, so yeah, if you could crowdsource it, you could go the survey route. You can just kind of like ask all your friends and family, what do you think of this, and this, get their opinions, and then just go for the mainstream, and that'll probably help. It'll get you, especially at the start as a beginner, because most of their feedback is just going to be technical based. Like it just doesn't look good. You know, it's like if you've got feedback where it's like someone like it doesn't look good, and then someone's like, I like it. It's like, okay, that's not really conflicting feedback. That's like someone's probably massaging your ego. Maybe it's your mom who's like, oh, keep going. And then you got a friend who's being brutally honest. It's like, I don't like it. Ask the one why they don't like it. That's the feedback. You know, get that general, the gut reaction is there. And just find out why it is they don't like it. If it's an artistic thing, like I don't find it interesting, I don't like the lines on the, you know, and you've gone for something adventurous, then obviously that matters, right? And if you showed it to 100 people and like literally none of them liked it, like for sure you're probably not appealing to anyone. But anyways, that'd be my advice there on how to handle feedback. All right, let's go to the next question.
Hey Andrew, I'm Tanmay from India. I wanted to ask, how do you get over the feeling of wanting to do everything by yourself? Like, I know I'm good at animating, but I often end up thinking that it would be great if I could model, rig, and uh, texture, and even set up the environment by myself. And then I end up um, in this rabbit hole of tutorials for things that will take me years to master.
I think that's good. What you said, you're good at animating, but you're thinking you want to learn, you know, modeling, rigging, environment. That is all actually good. I agree with that. You should do that because if you don't know that stuff, then you're going to be always dependent on somebody else, right? Not just in your career, like at working in a studio, you got to work with other artists, and you got to hope that you've done the right thing before you pass it off to them, and you don't know what they're doing, so you don't know you know. But also, like, you got to make a reel and a portfolio to actually get hired as an animator, and you can let it down if you've got weak parts. Like I've seen some portfolios and reels that there's actually some good skills to it, but it's being buried by these poor skills, right? Like if you know, you're a good animator, let's say, but you just did, I don't know, terrible texturing, terrible lighting, and just didn't care about composition and all that kind of stuff, you could actually just for years not get jobs because it just looks poor, right? But actually it's just because these other things are letting it down. So you got to know the difference between like a core competency that you have to hit sort of the minimum of, and then something that you want to excel at, right? So you want to be an animator, right? That doesn't mean you should only learn animation. You have to know everything, the core competencies at a basic core level in order to do anything in animation. Okay, studios don't want to hire someone who doesn't know rigging. As an example, if you want to be an animator, that is crucial. You have to know rigging. Because for an example, like, I mean, you could like learn animation off of a rig that you had to get from somebody else because of course you don't know how to do the rig, and maybe they got it from like somebody modeled it as well, and that rigger didn't know how to model it, but then they rigged it. The model had problems with it. The rig was done poorly, and then now you've animated it, and every time the character's arm goes up like that, the shoulder like kind of bunches up. So you don't know how to fix that because you don't know rigging. So now you've adjusted your animation so that never happens, so he doesn't have to lift his arm up as high, and you've confounded on these problems, and you've developed a habit because you don't know the other things. And what's worse, you could animate a shot if you worked in a studio. Let's say you happen to miraculously get a job without these skills. You could like end up in a pipeline where you need to animate a character, you know, talking to another character, and they're standing next to a window, and you've got the character like turned with their back against the window or something, because you don't know lighting, you don't know that you're not even going to be able to see the character's face, right? So you got to understand these things. That's why, like, learning the full process on how to do anything is like so important. Like I was hearing a comedian say that, because they were doing some acting work or something for a movie, and they learned editing. They learned video editing on one of the projects that they were doing, and they learned it improved their acting because they could act in a way that they knew that it would make it into the cut. Like, because they always thought, like, why is it that they take the wrong cut? Like, that wasn't the best take. There was a different take. Why did they use that take? And it's because of, like, continuity. Like, your arm was up here and then it was down here. It just doesn't work. You have to keep it in the same spot across all the takes, or else the director or the editor is going to have to pick the bad take, because otherwise it doesn't work. So learning these little things will all help everything. It's like it's a spider web of information. I know that's a terrible analogy, but it all has to work. It can't just be, you can't just focus on one thing. It can't exist by itself. It has to be propped up by everything else. So yeah, I mean, you got to do it, right? You got to do it. You can't be a good lighting person if you don't have anything to light, right? And you could take other people's models or scenes, but then you're dependent on other people and they could mess it up. And then you won't know when you're putting it in your reel that the reason you're not getting jobs is because you've depended on someone else. The only way it could work is if you're like, I don't know, you happen to be at school, like a university or something, and there was 5 of you and you all had separate competencies, like skills. One was wanted to be a rigger, one wanted to be a lighter, one wanted to be a texturer, and then you could balance it and like a pipeline jump from one to the other, and it all just happened to be amazing. It would never happen, but like you have to learn that core competence. It's like Noman. I learned the Noman School in Hollywood, which is one of the top schools. They have they require every student, regardless of whatever career they want to do, whether it's game design or concept art or animation, whatever it is that they want to do, they all have to complete this one module, or several modules probably, but it's a core competency level. They all have to go through the entire process of modeling something, of texturing it, of lighting it, of blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter what else you want to do. You have to know the basic minimum level, or you will not go anywhere. You'll always be held back by the things that you don't know, and you'll be dependent on others. So look, you're at the start and you're like, how, you feel like you want to learn environment, you want to learn character modeling, you want to learn lighting. Good. Do it, man. That'll improve your work. Like, look, you won't be able to put out as many character animations, let's say, right? If you're putting out, one character animation every month on your portfolio at the moment, okay? You're going to have to accept that you're going to take a break from that for a little while. You're not going to be able to put out as much work, on social media or whatever it is that you post it. You're not going to have that output anymore because you're going to be learning new skills. And learning new skills comes with the territory of it takes longer. But when you come out of it at the other end, you will for sure be a better animator. Guarantee it. So, I think it was Tim Ferriss had a good episode on his podcast talking about jack of all trades. I can't remember the name of the episode, actually. Maybe I'll put it in the show notes if I can remember it. But otherwise, just look up Tim Ferriss. Oh, I'm going to look it up right now, actually. Tim Ferriss, jack of all trades. I think he talked about skill stacking. The top 5 reasons to be a jack of all trades. That's good. Episode 19 of his podcast. Wow. 2007. Oh, I feel old now. Okay. But that's, I'd recommend that. That's a good start. But that'll explain why this all matters. Being a jack of all trades is really, really a good thing. Cool. All right. Let's move on to the next question.
Hi, Andrew. This is Jim. When I'm following a tutorial online, it's easy for me to know when it's over. And when I'm working on a project for somebody else, time usually dictates when I'm done. But when I'm working on a project for myself, it's hard for me to know when to stop. So my question for you is, how do you know when you're done with a project? Are there certain criteria you look for or certain goals you always try to meet? And do you ever just say, it's good enough and move on to something else? Thanks for taking my question.
Short answer, yes. Yes. Every single project ends with me saying, good enough. That's it, that'll do. And how do you know where good enough is? You get better. The longer you do it, the more experience you have. You'll know when you hit your acceptable mark where you're like, that's good enough to post now, or call finished. But there's an old quote, I don't even remember who said it. I think I just saw it in like a forum tagline on somebody's user, but it was something like, art is never finished, it's always abandoned. Art is abandoned, not finished, or something like that. But it's true. Like, there's no finish line. You could finesse everything further until the end of time, trying to improve it. And you have to know where the point of diminishing returns is. And I think that is really important. Where is that point of diminishing returns? Because, yeah, I mean, there are some artists I know that spend way too long on things. They're like, oh, I just want to, like, I really got to get this character done and this hair, and I got to do the texturing, and they're spending months, some people years. Like, you see them sometimes on the forums. They're just this one project forever, and they never finish it. It's just always ongoing. And I kind of think, like, you know, when you started this, you were a different artist than where you are today. And you're not going to... For starters, you're building on work that is probably poor. So the only way to really improve it is to go back to the start and, like, redo everything that you did. But I think you get better through a volume of work. I think I talked about this in my Habits of Effective Artists at the Blender conference, that presentation. But yeah, the best artists had a huge volume of work, right? They, like Picasso and all this, like thousands of artworks that you don't know about. You only know like the hits, but they just done thousands. And the greater volume of work that you did, the greater chance that you had a hit, a success. So, I think a big part of that is that when you go through the process of starting a project, finishing it all the way through to the end, and then like posting it, you learn a lot. And if you did, like, let's say you spent a week on 4 projects and you spent a month on it, like in total, right? So 4 projects versus if you spent a month on 1 project, often, I think, especially at the start, probably the person that did 4 in a week is probably going to learn more than the person who spent a month. Maybe not at the very start, because you need to work slowly at the very start, because speed painting or whatever they call it, like trying to work fast when you're a beginner, just means you end up making mistakes and not thinking about what you're doing. But some other artists have the other problem of they just spend way too long on it. So you got to know, like, where is my point of diminishing returns? When would I learn a lot? I'll learn more by jumping to the next project and finishing that one all the way through. Because that's important. Like, when I was doing this 2D art, I knew that I could get it there if I just spent longer, zoomed in, and just went to every little detail and, like, improved every little part. But, like, where I would improve it would be actually, like, on making the face, getting the shape right, all that kind of stuff that happens at the start. So this other stuff that I'm doing at the end is just putting, like spraying cologne on a corpse. It's decoration, but the problems were, you know, from in the middle or somewhere near the start. So doing more of that and getting through that volume will help you. So I think, though, that, like, as a beginner, your taste is probably pretty good, right? Because you know that if you pull up ArtStation next to your work and you look at it, the same sort of scene, like a grassy knoll, and you got a similar grassy knoll on an ArtStation 1, and this guy's a professional, he's been in the industry for decades, and then you got you know that yours doesn't look like that, but you don't know what it is that's wrong, okay? So it could just be like technical faults. You know, you've got a poor light, you've got stuff that's clipping, it doesn't look, the tree's all mashed up, all that kind of stuff. You don't know really, you know, what it is that can do it. So, I mean, for starters, one trick, it could just be you've got tunnel vision. You've been working on the project for so long, you can't actually identify what the flaws are anymore. I think of it like a similar way to, like, plasma TVs. You know how they, like, burn in an image when it's been on there too long? If you've been in a project for too long, eventually it's just, you can't see it clearly anymore. So I like to have multiple projects on the go. It's a hack that I recommend to every artist is work on a project until you hit a brick wall, and then start a next project, and then work on that until you hit a brick wall, because then when you come back to the other one, you'll see it with fresh eyes. It's the same reason why if you, like, you know, you're working on something all day and then you go and you have lunch and then you come back, you are surprised at what it is that you're noticing. You're like, whoa, why was I working on the shader when this is a much bigger problem? It's because you can't see the forest for the trees. The more you're in it and you zoom down and down and down into the minutia of each little thing, you forget that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. The bigger issue is this. So, I would say that if you're not sure if it's finished or not, maybe take a pause, have a break, and work on something else. And when you come back to it, you might notice some things that could be improved. I really like doing that. It always improves the work because you don't have to feel pressured. Like, I got to finish it, I got to post it, or I got to do it now, I got to do it tomorrow. Like, just wait. Just work on something else, and then come back, and you'll find something else that'll improve it. So, anyways. Otherwise asking for help on forums, friends, family, that kind of thing, just getting advice. All right, that's my answer. Hope that was helpful to you. Andev, was it? No, Jim Massessa. Okay. Before we jump to the next question, this episode was brought to you by my company, Polygon. Professionals know that trying to create everything themselves, every asset, every texture, all that kind of stuff, is a fantastic waste of their time. Because if you already know how to do something, there's enough people who want to beginner and they got to learn. They need to learn that stuff. But once you know how to do it, there's no point making another one. If you've already modeled a chair, you know how to do that process. There's no point doing it. It's just time. And so having somebody else do it, has done the work, and then you can buy it, download it, use it. That's just as fine as if you were to make it yourself. Again, not if you're learning, but anyways. So they know that, right? Which is why most professional artists are subscribed to multiple asset libraries. I myself, I think I'm subscribed to 3. Polygon is one of these asset libraries. So we have textures, we have models, and HDRs to help you create and design better spaces faster. So we are focused on architecture. So we research the industry, the top trends in interior design, architecture. We talk to our artists, we talk to people in the industry to find out what are the top materials, what are the top trends, what is it that people need more of. And we try to find that stuff so people can put it in their work so that their next project, when the client asks for it, they've got a place they can get it from. So we've got stuff that is hard to find elsewhere, like terrazzo or Zalige tile. And probably by the time this is out, we'll have firewood, flowers, plants. We got terracotta, we got cinder block down the line. We've got a bunch of stuff that's coming to Polygon very quickly. So it's really exciting. So Polygon is where you can do that. You can join 1 million artists who trust Polygon to help them make and design better spaces. You can sign up for free at polygon.com. That's POLIIGON.com. Polygon is where you can get the assets to help you make better renders faster. All right, next question.
Hi Andrew, my name is Mohammed. I'm from Mauritania. Is learning programming like Python for Blender is crucial for being professional 3D artist?
No. To repeat your question, do you need to, is learning Python necessary to be a 3D artist? No, absolutely not. Especially not nowadays, right? Like back in the day, Toy Story, back in those days, the only people who were 3D artists were computer scientists and programmers because there was no tools or very crude tools to do anything. So you needed to code in order to do your creative thing that you need to do. Nowadays, the tools and the hardware and everything is so fantastic that it's gradually getting to that place that the tools are sort of disappearing and you can work creatively, right? So like, you don't have to know about materials, like how, the physics of light on an object and how to, position the shader so that, it handles the Fresnel and all that in relation to the roughness and all that kind of stuff. We've got the principled shader. Provided you use that, it's pretty watertight. It's in there. So it's less technical. So definitely not today. Programming is that whole other level. Because some artists, like the people who have learned Python, are very vocal about, like, it's very important. Every artist needs to learn Python because it's so important it'll enable you to do so many things. And that is true. I do not doubt that 1 second. I know for sure. I mean, there's been cases where I've been working on a scene and I'm like, I've hit the limit of what Blender can achieve. It'd be good if I could code something to do this thing, you know? Like you could work on a scene and you need like a lightning bolt to come down and hit the thing. And like you can't get the squiggles to look right. It needs to be, you know, or automated. It needs to happen procedurally. And you're like, it just doesn't work. Like if you knew Python, you could probably develop something to do it. Or an add-on that could help you in your workflow to more rapidly build things. Yes. However, what a lot of people miss is opportunity cost, which is that when you are learning one thing, you are not able to learn another thing. Okay? Whilst you are learning Python, you are not learning the fundamentals of compositing, of lighting, of materials, of modeling, of design, of all of these things that I would bet the house on being more important than the Python. Okay. Again, there's a use for Python. If you want to be a TD, technical director, or if you want to develop add-ons, or you're working on a project that you know for sure requires some Python skills, if you want to make some generative NFT art or something, and it has to procedurally build based on output variables that relate to the climate, the sun, or weather, or something like that, and you want to control the artwork, it's like, yeah, you got to learn Python. But unless you know, like if you're starting out, if you're an artist, learning Python, like that's way down the line. If you ever hit that roadblock where you need to learn that, then that would be the time that you need to learn it. But like right now, for sure, because I mean, I've been doing it for like 10, 15 years. I still don't know the principles of design well enough, because you never finish it, by the way. There's not like a checkbox of when you go like, yep, I know good design. Like you always got to improve. You got to expose yourself to new techniques, new workflows, new concepts, better ways of working. You're always honing it. You're always like, that's what has been interesting, like interviewing some of these best artists. It's like they're always learning. They're always trying to improve their own skills. It's incredible. They just never stop. Whereas a lot of people think like it's a checkbox. Like once I know how to model, I can model. Hard surface modeling, check. You always have to keep learning. And so Python, I mean, I haven't experienced that many projects where I need to know Python. There's been a few, but I worked around it. And learning the other skills, lighting and composition and color, and picking up a camera and learning photography, I swear it'd be like 20 times more useful than Python. To be brutal, I mean, look, I don't know Python, so maybe I'm missing a part of it that people that know it for sure are getting an advantage on me. But I really don't think I've needed to. There's just been so few projects I've needed to know it. There has been a few, but like for sure, everything else has been more important. And I've got like 10 other things I want to learn first, and Python is like way at the end there. So I think if you're getting started, especially, you do not need to. And it's definitely not necessary. In the future, it'll all be VR. We'll all be in the metaverse hanging out with Mark Zuckerberg in space, and we'll be painting with our arms or with our brain, and there'll be no technical tools, and we'll all live happily ever after. While the world goes to shit or something, I don't know. It's all dystopian. Is there any, like, here's the thing, it's like every time there's a new technology, I swear, it's like we've all just seen so many dystopian movies, we just automatically assume it's not a good thing. You know? It's like, yeah, Facebook designing the metaverse, I'm sure it's not, you know, they're going to use that data for something and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, I mean, that feels like the easy answer. Like, there's got to be some... And like everyone living in the metaverse, it's like, yeah, not seeing each other face to face, that's got to have a cost. But like, it'll also bring people together that would normally not be able to be together. You wouldn't have to move to Silicon Valley to be in the tech space. You could meet in VR face to face, or with the hologram AR, what is it? Magic Leap, you know? You could prevent workplace accidents with proper training through VR, because you can learn on a heavy machinery in the VR thing and make your mistakes in there before you enter the real world. You know, all this stuff. But I don't know, it just feels like the go-to thing. Everyone's very negative about all things technology. And for sure, look, I'm not saying it's like, no, it's good, it's great. I was thrilled when I learned that Facebook was building a metaverse. It's like, I know that no one likes it, and probably for very many good reasons, but it's like, it just feels too easy to immediately go, everything is bad. It used to be better when there was less technology. It's like, yeah. Anyways, there's huge advantages, is all I'm trying to say. Let's go to a random question.
Hi Andrew, Cecil from the USA. I'm an aspiring visually impaired 3D animator. I was wondering if you had any advice on the level of detail scrutinized in basic to professional projects for stationary and moving models, as well as scenery when viewed by fully sighted persons. And I wanted to say I appreciate all the hard work you've done for everyone. Thank you.
Cecil. Yeah, that's a tough one, man. For starters, I don't know how I would describe that. How much level of detail is required, because I don't know what my level of detail is. How would I describe what my acceptance is? You know it when you see it. Like, give me a baseline and then I'll say it needs more or less. But it also really depends on what it is you're working on. Like, if you're a, old school Wile E. Coyote kind of animation with like blocky colors and just simple shapes moving around, probably you could get by with less. So yeah, it really depends on the style, and you got to have a baseline so we can talk about whether it's needs more or less detail, or scrutiny, as you said. But to be brutally honest, Cecil, because I do want to be honest. I don't want to be, I do feel that a lot of people who are trying to be nice are not doing the person any favors. Like, if I was just like, you can do it, man, it just all pros and like motivation and inspiration and all that kind of thing. Sometimes the reality is also what you need to hear. I'll be brutally honest. I'm not going to say that it's impossible, but it will be stacked against you. I will say that. Especially going to work at a studio, it's not fair. I'll say that it's not fair, but it is the way it is. And people that are hiring, they have to look out for what's best for, they've got a problem that they need solved. And if they've got two people and one of them is visually impaired and the other one is not visually impaired, I think we can guess which one they will go for. Like I said, it's not fair, but that really is just something you have to be aware of, that it is a visually centric field, obviously, and being visually impaired is definitely a huge hindrance to that. But I'm sure you're aware of this, right? Like, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I don't know what your level of impairment is. I can see based on the video you are reading a screen, right? So you're able to read something, and obviously you can do 3D. You're clearly doing something with 3D, so yeah, it's just there's an impairment there. So I don't know what the level is. Where was I going with that? I can't remember. So yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I've heard of many people who have impairments, visual impairments, that are able to succeed in the industry. We talked about color blindness on the previous episode or two ago, and that there are actually quite a lot of colorblind artists, despite that being seemingly a impairment and a disability, and yet they say they're doing fine. In fact, some of them say it's actually an advantage because they can position colors in different ways that other people wouldn't think about. So there is, it's not necessarily as bad. However, you certainly could rarely call it an advantage. So, being brutally honest, and I know that that's, it's not nice. And I don't want to say this to just say look, just don't, just career cut, think of something else to do. I just want to be totally brutally honest with you, because I don't want to do that thing that is just not helpful, I find, to people. You gotta be aware of the reality. So it is rough and it's not fair, but that is just the way that one will hold out. But I am actually very curious, your answers to some of those things. If you reach out to me in the comments, if you happen to read this, I'd love to know some answers to those, whether you've considered this, what sort of style you think you could do, what impairment you have, and yeah. Anyways, that's a tough one, Cecil. But thank you for answering the question. That is, you put yourself out there. Appreciate it. All right. Next question.
Hey Andrew, my name is Łukasz, and I have a question about where should I ask quick question about some functionality in Blender that I need answers ASAP. I tried already different websites, Discord server and Twitter even, and I usually get an answer next day or never. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, man. Just use Twitter. You get an answer within 5 seconds. No. Yeah. It obviously depends on how many followers you have is what you're going to get out of Twitter. Discord, I don't know. I do not use Discord. I don't really like it, to be brutally honest. But that's its own thing. Okay. That is just what it is. If you're relying on free help from the internet, you kind of have to accept when you get it. There's not really a place that you're going to guarantee that you can get a quick answer. I remember I used to just have to position, when I got a problem that I hit, I wrote it down, and then I thought about something else that I could do during the day related to the project that I could work around that one, whilst I waited until I could post the question, or I posted the question then, sorry, I didn't write it down, posted it online, and then worked on something else during the day, knowing that I'm probably going to get an answer the next day or the day after. I'll probably get some responses. But until then, I just have to accept that it's going to take some time, and I need to work on something else. Yeah, there's not really, I think, what was that announcement, the Blender Foundation, there was that company that they're working with now or something like that is now offering professional support. Like, it's mostly aimed, I think, enterprise custom, studios and things that need to depend on Blender, and they need somebody to call for technical support when they hit problems. But you got to pay for that, obviously, and I'm sure it would be expensive. So I would recommend, here's something you can do. Go to a meetup. Go to a Blender meetup. And if you don't have a meetup, start a meetup. I started a meetup where I am. I didn't think I mentioned my cell phone. I just called it a Blender meetup for Brisbane or something. Now there's like 20 to 30 regular people that come to it. We've been doing it for a couple of years now. And with this, you could eventually befriend people that are in your area. They'll be in the same time zone as you. And you could text them, you could call them whenever you have problems, like people in the community are doing. You've got local people then that you can reach out to. So that is something that you could do for free, but it does require putting yourself out there, starting a meetup group, going out and meeting people, and then you'll get that. But yeah, otherwise, Twitter, good luck. The blender.stackexchange.com, that is a very good one. Discord, I don't know. Blender Artists, I don't know. I haven't really posted there in a long time. Yeah, those are the places you do, and you just have to work around it. You got to work on your next problem, work around that problem whilst you're waiting for a response, because it's free advice. What can you do? Get mad that the free people aren't replying fast enough? They've all got stuff to do. Surprised that people actually give help for free. It's quite surprising. Like, people are clicking on other threads to read their problem and download their blend file and help them out. It's really remarkable what the open source community is doing, to be quite honest. It's amazing that anything works. So yeah, that is my answer for you. Next question.
Andrew, recently I've decided to start my own YouTube channel, and I try to make my first video on storytime animations, like stuff what probably Odd Ones Out and Jaden Animations do, if you've heard of them. And one problem I suffer from is drawing perspectives and trying to draw an avatar which actually looks like me, and how to improve my art. Because obviously, if you're going to draw numerous frames, you're gonna have to be good at it and draw from different perspectives, especially for 2D animation. So I was wondering how I can improve my art and improve drawing from different perspectives and different angles and different proportions. That's it. Thank you.
So that I'll answer that quickly because I know most people watching aren't in 2D. if you want to get good at perspective drawing, this is what I would do. You copy reference of perspective, like draw a building, and then try to like copy it 1-to-1. And then when you finish it, you put your drawing over the top of it, and you'll see where the lines differ. You could even like, not a building, just like get a cube and like try to draw a cube from different angles, and then put it 1-to-1. You'll see how off your lines are. Even just like, you know where the line is supposed to go, but your angle will be wrong. That'll teach you like, yeah, how to get the perspective, like your eye will start to be fine-tuned to that. But then beyond that, this is one I learned from Ben Morrow. If you want to listen to that podcast, that's on this podcast. Just look for the Ben Morrow episode. But yeah, he talked about how the way he practices and trains is like he will try to draw something from memory. Like he'll go like, what does a Humvee look like? He'll draw a Humvee, and then he'll look at a reference photo of a Humvee, and then he will draw it from the reference, and then he'll do it again without the reference. And then he'll try to draw it again from multiple angles, because that builds the skill of like trying to imagine the 3D space. What is it what is a 3D object from different angles? And then you get better at being able to do that. So it's just repetition and keep doing those boring exercises that are vitally important, and most artists don't want to do. They want to do the finished piece because then it's fun and you feel like you're making progress. But really, you got fundamental problems that will be fixed with simple exercises. That's the advice I keep giving my mom. But she doesn't want to listen. She keeps doing finished pieces and paintings. It's like, Mom, the shading is wrong. You need to learn the shading, and you keep spending days on a piece that you would learn the shading problems if you just spent like a couple of days like on just small objects of shading and just focus on that, and you won't be distracted by everything else. Anyways, all right. So that was my answer to you today, and I think we'll do one more. Why not? We'll do one more. Let's have a look. We've got names on these. I think I've listened to them and I've written it down. Let's have a look.
Hi Andrew, Philip here from South Africa. The question I have for you is, I'm a subscriber on our station, and I just want to know if I should spend a lot of time making good quality renders and then publish my work, and if I should maybe work on a piece, and if it's good enough then publish it, so I can basically ramp up my portfolio, so that other artists can see what kind of angle I'm taking at my work, or if they can see what level of talent I am with my 3D art progress. That's the question. That's the question I have for you. And love the podcast, love your work, and cheers, man.
Well, thank you, Philip. Or Felipe, whatever you said. I don't know how you say Philip in South African. That was a weird. What was it again?
Hi, Andrew. Philip here from.
Oh, it's just Philip. Oh, yeah, somehow it sounded French. All right, never mind. Thank you, Philip. Good question. Okay, so you wanted to know, should you be publishing more or less artworks? Like, should you be trying to like get a higher output for your art station so that other artists can see the angle you're approaching it from? That's what you said. I wouldn't recommend that. Just purely so that you can get work out there is not important. It is the quality of the artwork if you want to be known for anything good, if you want to get a job. Now, that doesn't, because it sort of relates to what we were talking about before of like, well, how long do you spend on a piece before you say enough is enough and there's a point of diminishing returns, okay? Because some artists are working too fast and others are working too slow. There's a balance there, and it's not clear. I realize that. When you're starting out, you need to know what it is you're doing, and you probably need to work a lot slower than a professional will. They can build things rapidly. Look at Jama Jurabev building a scene. It's like, oh my goodness. If you tried to replicate Jama's speed, it would be a mess. You would not know what you're doing. He's operating at that speed because he's experienced and he knows what shortcuts he can take. When you're starting out, you got to know what it is you're doing, and you're just going to mess it all up beyond all hell if you try and go fast. It's what 2D artists, from talking to them, they say one of the biggest mistakes people do is do those speed paintings that they see on YouTube of like rapidly building something and try to finish a piece in 15 minutes. It's just a complete waste of time if you don't know what you're doing. and you'll develop lazy habits in doing so. So, okay, but having said that, there are people that have spent years on things and they're not finishing it. So you got to learn where that point of diminishing returns is. Okay. Now you also laid in the question of that you're real, like you're posting it online. So getting feedback is important, right? But that is different to posting something in a portfolio or a reel. Building a name for yourself or a reputation or getting your name out there perhaps, that is a separate thing. And what matters more in that case is posting less frequently, posting really high quality stuff. I've said this before, I think, but we once hired a guy who had one piece of artwork in his portfolio. Just one. Okay? But it was really strong. It really demonstrated a lot of good skills. And I'm like, this guy knows what he's doing. Then on the flip side, we've seen some artists that had like 40 pieces and like one or two of them were pretty good. But the others, the reason it was a red flag is that you don't know, looking at that why did they put that in their portfolio? That's the question I have in my head as an employer. Why did you put that in your portfolio? And the thing that I fear is that you don't know that one looks bad. That's what's stopping me. So don't make it hard for yourself, okay? You have to put less in your reel, less in your portfolio. If you've got 2 or 3 pieces in your portfolio that are strong, solid, it's better than 10 okay ones or 7 okay ones and 3 good ones, okay? Have less. If you want to get employed, have less. Because that's the other thing. It'll make them want more. They're like, ooh, this guy's got really, wow, 1 or 2, these 2 pieces are great. I wonder what else he can do. That's what they're thinking. So have less for sure. But if it is feedback you are after, then post more. Okay, that's a separate thing. The portfolio and the reels, that is for an employer. That is to get hired. That is your best stuff that you know is you're hitting your benchmark. The other stuff, throwing it to forums, getting feedback on social media and places like that, that is feedback related. That is for the internal art community, not employers. Post as many times as you want of your work in progress to those people and get as much feedback as you can. But the other stuff, yeah, just hold that portfolio to the highest level and don't try to rapidly push stuff out. That would be my advice for you, Philip, not Philippe. Anyways, that's going to do it for us on this podcast episode. Thank you for watching. If you did, hit like and subscribe to this new YouTube channel, the Andrew Price Podcast. Yeah. Subscribe to Polygon. That's what this episode was brought to you by. Polygon, POLIGON.com. Make better renders faster with better assets. Thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you in a future episode.